At here is a frozen lake. It's actually Lake Carl Blackwell in Oklahoma, and this is a scene that you hardly ever see in Oklahoma, a frozen lake. I mean, this thing was solid. We didn't actually go on it, so okay, maybe there's an asterisk. Maybe it's not completely solid because we didn't walk out on the ice because it wasn't really safe to. At this point, when I shot this photo, the temps had been maybe it was about 40 degrees this day, and it was above freezing the day before. But I shot this at the tail end of that really bad cold snap that we had throughout the Midwest in February 2021. And we were stuck inside our house for a couple days because it was so cold. And then as things began to gradually warm up, my wife and I wanted to do something a little different so that the kids could get out and just see something different. So we took them to Lake Carl Blackwell, not to walk on the ice, but to see the ice and to see the snow and just to see a kind of environment that they usually don't see, that I don't usually see in Oklahoma. So we were wandering around by the edge of the lake, and I gave them each a stick, like a board from my garage. And I said, here, you can bring this along and whack at the lake with it or whack at whatever you find. So they were doing that. My kids were doing that. And I saw this scene here. And what really struck me was the contrast and the shadows. So you have this bright lake. In fact, I shot this using exposure compensation with a -1 exposure value. So everything was underexposed slightly because the snow is so bright that it kind of messes up the light meter in the camera. And I shot this underexposed intentionally so I could adjust a little bit in post and I wouldn't lose basically the data from the white parts wouldn't be clipped. Anyway, it's kind of off track here, but I saw this scene and I saw this bright snow, this clear snow on the lake, and then these deep shadows on the left-hand side where the sun was coming down over these hills, these mounds of rocks that were covered with ice and snow, and it just created kind of a cool scene. Now, I had my D7100, which was a pretty bad choice for this because you couldn't see a thing. I had to get down really low, and I couldn't actually bend down that far to get this shot because I was kind of perched on a couple of rocks, and it was just a strange situation. So I had to use live view and use the screen in the back of my camera to compose a shot. Well, the screen on the back of the D7100 is pretty bad and it doesn't flip out. So I was basically just guessing the whole time and playing around with a couple different things. I used back button focus and a fairly small aperture. I think I shot this at f8, maybe f4. I should check on that. Anyway, a fairly small aperture to get things a little more sharp and in focus. And I wanted the foreground to be in focus as well as much of the background as I could. So I focused on this, the foremost lump of ice that you see right in the foreground here, and then kind of adjusted the view. Again, kind of guessing at all this because I wasn't really able to see the screen of my camera, and ended up with this shot here. Now I had to adjust it a little bit in post. I had to play with the lights and the darks a little bit, adjust the exposure of the exposure and the white balance of the sky, just a few tweaks here and there to get to this image here, which this basically represents what I saw that day, even though it's been adjusted a little bit. I adjusted it so it could appear like it was actually in person. And there's something about this scene that is really neat to see in Oklahoma. And looking at this reminds me of that time that I don't think we'll see again for a little while. So it was kind of a cool thing to remember.